This is Dan, and this is the Napkin Academy. Today's lesson will be focusing on process step 1, which means looking. How are we going to become better looking? And I don't mean how are we going to make ourselves prettier. I mean, how are we going to get better at looking at the world around us? The reason why this is important is, let's say that we have a challenge, we face a problem, and we want to try to figure out a way to visually clarify or resolve that problem. But if we don't know what it is that we have to look at, we have no idea what it is to draw. So let's say our problem, whatever it is, our idea, is sitting over here. The first thing we need to do is we need to have the ability to look at it. And then we would have the ability to draw it. We can't draw anything until we've had the ability to look at something. And for those of us who think, as we've talked about before, I can't draw, the biggest problem isn't so much that we lack the ability to draw. We've seen how easy that is. The problem is we're not sure about how to go about looking at things. So here's the way we're going to approach this. Normally, looking is a very passive process. It's really just kind of scanning the environment. It's what our eyes and our mind's eye are doing all the time, thousands of times a second. But it's very passive. We don't even have to think about it at all, which is the beauty of it. That's how we make our way through the world visually. But in our mind, looking is really just kind of a wave like this. We don't really spend any time thinking about it. It just happens. Well, what we want to do is we want to make looking become active. We want to take charge of this process and say it's not enough for it to be passive. What we want to talk about is something we're going to call active looking. And what I mean by active looking is really sort of hijacking the mental process of scanning the world, understanding how it works so we can use it the way we want to use it when we need to use it to make our pictures to help us solve our problems. So here's an example of looking. Imagine if I told you that I wanted you to draw a horse. Okay, go ahead and draw a horse. Oh my gosh, what would I draw? I mean, I can get the idea of horse in my mind, I think, but I don't know how to draw a horse. And therefore many of us think, see, I told you, I can't draw. Well, now, what would happen if I said it a little bit differently? What if I told you, here is a horse? I'd like you to draw it. Now, what we need to do is be able to look at that thing. Let's look at that puppy and see what we see. So I see over here, back to our shapes. Remember our shapes? Line, square, circle, triangle, blob. Yes, I could trace this horse with a blob, but that doesn't really do me very much good. What I want to do is I want to be able to look at this horse, and I want to be able to see what patterns are in there. So let's say there is a kind of a circle here. I think I see a circle here. I'm going to connect them with a box right here, a square right there. Look at this big old triangle. Have you ever seen a nicer triangle? I think I see a circle up here too. And then this looks like a triangle as well. Maybe I add a little circle below it. A bit of a circle, just a box for a tail. Legs, let's just simplify those legs. I mean, we could draw them as triangles. We could just draw them as boxes. Let's just draw them as a box there, a box there. This back legs, horseback legs are tricky. But let's just draw them as some squares. And that's kind of hard to see, so let's redraw that now that we've had a chance to look at our horse. Well, we saw that there was a big circle, and we saw that there was a smaller circle, and we saw that there was a square connecting them, a big old triangle up on the front, a circle, a much smaller triangle, another part of a circle, square, 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 square. Oh, we forgot these little triangles up here. Let's put little triangles. Well, there we've got a horse. It doesn't look particularly beautiful, but I'll bet if we tried it one more time, we could make it even nicer. Let's simplify that horse one more time. Let's now look at what we've just drawn and try that one more time. Circle, circle, square, triangle, circle, triangle, square, 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 curve. I want to make that a box. Triangle. Well, now I've got something that's pretty identifiable as a horse, and all I had to do was look at the real thing. I had to just look at it. Now that's what I call active looking. We don't just see the overall blobby shape. What we do is we have to drive in a little bit deeper and say, okay, what pieces are making this up? Now, you might say, well, what good does drawing a horse have to do with business? I mean, and we'd be right. I mean, unless we happen to work on a farm, drawing horses isn't going to be of a whole lot of use to us as we start to solve problems in the business world. More likely, what we're going to see, in fact, we see them all the time, every day, are things that look like PowerPoint presentations or things that look like spreadsheets. And we're going to be told, okay, can you draw a picture of that? Or can you draw a picture of that? Because goodness knows, someone might say, there's certainly a lot of brilliant ideas in here, but I can't see them. There's certainly a lot of interesting insight in here, but I can't see it. You, with your fancy visual problem-solving skills, can you draw those things? Well, they don't look anything like a horse, but I'm going to tell you this. We're going to use exactly the same process that we just went through drawing that horse. This is going to be a little bit abstract, but bear with me because it's going to work. And here's the way the process is going to work. This is exactly the same thing that we did with our horse. And now we're going to do it with the ideas that are contained within a complex PowerPoint document or the ideas that are contained within a spreadsheet. Step number 1 of active looking is simply to collect as much as we can. Collect as much visual information or any information, as much data and info as we can. And after we've collected it, we want to lay it out in a place and in a way where we can really see it. We want to lay it out where we can see it side by side. You see, the real problem with trying to solve problems on a computer screen, especially if we're looking at someone's PowerPoint document, which is the most typical way in business today that we think we're solving problems, is we're looking at this computer screen. And the best that we can do is to see one slide of PowerPoint at a time, or a bunch of them, but in such a way that they're so tiny that we can't really make sense of any of them. What we want to do is we want to literally take and print it out. I know there are going to be people who are upset, but this is the only way we're going to be effective at really being able to solve complex problems derived from something we saw on a computer, is we have to print it out, we have to find a big space on the floor, and we have to lay it all out where we can see it. Because what we want to do is we want to let our mind's active looking abilities be able to make connections between the things that we're seeing. So we lay it all out. And then, step number 1, collect it all. Step number 2, lay it all out. Hey, here's a little side note. A spreadsheet, even though for those of us that may consider ourselves more the creative types, a spreadsheet is probably the most terrifying thing on earth. A spreadsheet is our friend. A spreadsheet is the way that someone else or we can take a whole bunch of data and lay it all out where we can see it all at once. And I'll show you in a moment how that's going to be very helpful for us. So do not be afraid of spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are going to be our friend. We're going to change them completely, but they're going to be our friend. Step number 1, collect. Step number 2, lay it out where we can see it. Step number 3, we'll go through this. Find the coordinates. Find the underlying coordinate system that underpins all of our data or all of our idea or all of our PowerPoint. Find the underlying coordinate system. And we're going to do that in a moment. Once we've found the coordinate system, find coordinates. Actually find the coordinate system. We will talk about what that means. We will demonstrate those in a moment. Which brings us then to step number 4, which is now that we've got the coordinate system, we need to map in our data or our ideas into that coordinate system. That's step number 4. Map in our data. Which brings us then to step number 5, which is draw a conclusion. Now that I'm able to look at all of my data in a single place where I can see it all, and it's mapped together under a coordinate system, I have the ability to draw a conclusion and say, this is what I need to draw. This is what I saw. Quick review. How do we go about doing active looking? 1, collect everything we can. 2, lay it out where we can see it. 3, find the coordinate system. 4, map in our data. 5, and only at 5, do we really draw our conclusion.